Hello, I'm Robert Jackson, state senator from Manhattan, and we're on Represent NYC on Manhattan Neighborhood Network, commonly known as MNN. We've been joined by Dr. Hazel Dukes, the president of the New York State NAACP and a civil rights leader for decades and decades. So welcome, Hazel Dukes. And also we've been joined by our Congressmember, Charles Rangel, once a Congressmember, always a Congressmember, who, as you know, represented not only Harlem, but Northern Manhattan and parts of the Bronx for decades and decades. And so our Congressmember, welcome to Manhattan Neighborhood Network, Represent NYC. And also we've been joined by a former state assembly member and now the chair of the New York State County Dems, Keith Wright, who is born and raised in Harlem and knows everything that we should know about Harlem. So Keith Wright. Now we have Gerson Borrero, who was an editor-in-chief of El Diario, who was an editor-at-large for City and State. He's a commentator on many shows, especially New York One, in which I watch, and good to see each other in person. So Gerson, let me start off with Dr. Dukes. Dr. Dukes, as you know, life and legacy of our former mayor, Mayor David Dinkins, the 106th mayor of the city of New York. And you have been on several shows talking about his legacy and who he was as a mayor and as an individual. So let me ask you, what is, in your opinion, the best thing for you in the memory of David Dinkins, our former mayor?
Thank you so much, Senator Jackson, for having me to share with my good colleagues on this. 10 days been a roller coaster for me, thinking about memories of Mayor Dinkins, and memories become treasures. I've had calls and letters, sympathy cards from our colleagues that work with us in government. Let me say, I know David before government. Was introduced, I lived in Nassau County, by Basil Patterson to Dave Dinkins. And then as I got involved in local politics in Nassau County, they formed the Gang of Four, along with Archie Spigner and Guy Brewer. They formed what was known as the Council of Black Elected Democrats. And I served as secretary to that group while Dave Dinkins served as chair. Never thought anything about becoming mayor of the city of New York. That wasn't where we was just starting off. And so I know David as my boss, my confidant, and a mentor for me. And the highlight of knowing him over the span of these decades, he never changed. He never, his uncompromising integrity was great. And if you listen to people who described him as a gentleman, as a this, of that, they leave out two important ingredients that David, that captured him. I think if we was going to, we can't put him in any box, because as we were talking before, David made everyone feel important that was around him. He cared for people. He was tough as nails, as Keith said. He could chastise you, but never raised his voice. And when he got through with his chastisement, he would say, "Oh, but you're still my little cupcake." And so the the integrity of this man caring and sharing for people. And he believed that this city was a gorgeous mosaic, not only in his public life, but in his private life. And so David Dinkins was a man for all season. And for this city and for this nation, we've lost a giant.
Let me turn to our Congressmember, Charles B. Rangel, who was in office in Congress and one of the leaders in Congress, chairman of the Ways and Means Committee, who not only knew David Dinkins going back, but before he came the mayor. So Congressmember, let me ask you, I saw you were at National Action Network along with other individuals, but tell me, as far as what was the most inspiring aspect of your relationship with David Dinkins, the 106th mayor of New York?
Listen, most all that has to be said about my buddy has been said. I really lost my older brother when he was very young. And David said he didn't have a brother. So we started that brother thing so many years ago. And then it became popular. Confused my mother a little bit, but it worked out. Everybody has a story with David Dinkins, and it all boils down to that he really loved people, especially children, especially New Yorker. And don't get him started on the United States Marines. My son was a Marine, and they have a different language that they talk as patriot. His fortitude came through when he first became mayor. And it seems like everything that could bad happen to a city happened at one time. And he never really lost control over understanding how serious it was. When he explained to me what he told Nelson Mandela, it may not impress other people, but he told Mr. Mandela that in the United States, and specifically in Harlem, there were so many people that looked just like him. But unlike so many Americans, they have no clue of where they came from, their language, their name. But he was above all of that. He was more than just Africa. He was international. He was the epitome of what God wanted human beings to be. And when Nelson Mandela came to Harlem, I'm 90 years old. I have never seen the joy, the pride, the feeling that people had in thanking David Dinkins for bringing this great giant to our great community. You don't realize sometimes the greatness when you're close to a person. But I know one thing, that when that history book is written about mayors of the city of New York, Dave Dinkins is going to be at the head of the list. My biggest problem with Dave Dinkins was walking down the street with him. And I'm certain that all of you have had the experience. He wouldn't just take a handshake. He would listen to Republicans. He would listen to Blacks, whites, Jews, Gentiles. But my God, when he saw a child, he felt compelled to say his dad was a barber in Trenton and he made it, and to stick to school and they would make it. He really loved kids. And thank you for putting this together, Senator.
We appreciate, because obviously the relationship that all of you, all of the guests here today had with our 106th mayor is extremely important. And I remember the mayor telling the joke about, your mother, can you tell us that joke if you don't mind? Can you?
It's no joke, except when Dave Dinkins tells it. And Dave said, one day I told him that my mom was having some problem with people from the church was saying, I didn't know you had another son. She had no clue what the woman was talking about. So she was nice in trying to find out politically what I'd gotten myself into. I explained it to her. She said, that's okay. It's difficult to explain, but it's okay. So I told it to Dave. as a joke. Dave sent her flowers and then sent a letter saying that he never had a brother. Charlie had lost his brother, that we have become extremely close, and that if she could see her way clear, just to say that she adopted him, it would make him feel so much better, and hope it would make her feel more comfortable. Then David goes on to tell the story. Charlie Rangel didn't mind that at all. But when his mother started saying, my son the mayor instead of my son the congressman, he said, he took license, but my mom loved him.
Keith, now you're like a son to David Dinkins. I read where you said that when he offered you employment. Can you tell us that and how he treated you?
Oh, no, and thank you for having me on, Senator. Just like Hazel and like the Congressman Rangel, I knew David Dinkins way before he was mayor. I grew up in the next building, went to school, elementary school and high school with both of his children. We used to take the school bus every day, but he was this towering figure that was always sharp, would always walk home. We would be in the playground and you'd see Dave walking with his cashmere coat and what have you. And we knew that he was somebody. We just knew that he was somebody. He worked hard for everything that he ever achieved and everything he did. Let's not forget, Robert, you've run for borough president. I've run for borough president. Dave ran for borough president not once, not twice, but 3 times, which was an ordeal. And let's not forget, he ran against Andy Stein. He ran for 2 times, right? Who eventually became the city council president. But I bet you no one in this audience, with the exception of maybe Charlie Rangel, can remember who actually had the audacity to primary Dave Dinkins on that last time that he won in 1985 for Manhattan Borough President. It was Jerry Nadler.
I am glad I've forgotten that.
It was Assemblyman Jerry Nadler.
Wow.
And Dave won. So, and then I had worked on a couple of his campaigns and I had just gotten out of law school and I was looking for a job. And so I was always interested in politics. And I'll never forget, it was February 19th, 1985.
Wow. You remember the date?
I remember the date. Charlie Rangel, Percy Sutton, I think Basil were walking out of Dave's office. They were euphoric that, they had a friend in the Manhattan Borough President's office. And you got to remember, he was the first borough-wide person in our community in a long time. And then, and of course, I had talked to Charlie Rangel. I said, listen, man, I need a job, blah, blah, blah. And so I got my last unemployment check, February 19, 1985. Charlie Rangel gave me the wink and the thumbs up. And Bill Lynch and Dave Dinkins said, you're hired. And I took the sweat from my brow. I was happy. And then I had to go to work. And you got to remember, I was the director of the Harlem office, which was a big deal. I mean, so now we had a Manhattan Borough President from our community. And Dave was an absolute visionary because he issued the first reports. I'll never forget. We had to work hard on these reports. First reports on homelessness, the first reports on AIDS. And I did everything for Dave. I mean, I wrote his speeches. I did a lot of advanced work for him. And yes, I did the occasional running to the dry cleaner for Dave. Did whatever it took. You have to look at the psychological makeup of the man. Charlie Rangel talked about he was a Marine, which is the toughest part of the armed services, probably. In college, he was at Howard University. He majored in mathematics.
Mathematics, yes.
Mathematics, which is one of the hardest fields to conquer. My mother was a mathematician. Believe me, I know. I got my father's genes. We know nothing about math. And then he also became a lawyer. He went to Brooklyn Law School. So whatever you told him, 1 + 1 better equal 2. So he worked hard to master some of the, I guess, toughest subject matters wherever. And so, but above and beyond everything else, Dave was a teacher to me. He was a teacher, and he taught me about the kind of elected official that I wanted to be, taught me the kind of person that I wanted to be.
Now, Gerson, I look at you as a commentator on New York One, so you're always analyzing everyone. What was the high point in your relationship with the mayor, and how did that happen?
In the context of what David to me was, first of all, before we went on air, I was saying that he made me feel like someone young. And I say that as someone who was a student of life. What I always saw in David Dinkins was this learned man, a patriot, and that discipline that David not only got from his upbringing, from his family, from his mother, and also in being with his brothers on the political side, and the kind of persona he was. While Harold Washington had to not only be convinced in Chicago to run, but money had to be raised. So David was always going to your point about being a mathematician. He was nobody's fool. Where's the money? How am I going to do this? So in that sense, I said, wow. And talking to Bill Lynch, to Dennis Rivera, who knew him well, at that point, what David Dinkins wanted to do and what he wanted to achieve, understanding what Basil Patterson and Percy Sutton, and of course, Congressman Rangel and David Dinkins wanted to do, we understood that. I also enjoyed personally the infighting between Brooklyn and who was the powerful one, Brooklyn or if it was Harlem. So all of those things I covered, but then I kept looking at this man. I guess in his soft-spoken way, just kept moving ahead like the ever-ready bunny. It was like he knew what he had to do and nobody was stopping him. But the biggest lesson I had, and it hurt me personally as a human being, as a Puerto Rican who understands the plight of, that we came in this boat from Africa and forced. So all of that connected when I saw the mob of 10,000 police officers and the disgraceful things that they charge our mayor, shouting at him, wanting to storm. I never forgot that. And in that heated, hateful assault on his character, I saw the grace of the man, the dignity of the man, the ability to keep him focused in what the task at hand was, is running the city of New York, the greatest city in the world. And you had these racists, these people who wanted to assault him. They wanted to take him down because he was too, and I realized then they're afraid of his intelligence. They're afraid of his dignity. They're afraid of the fact that he is a patriot, unlike them who were traitors. So all of that came to mind, and understanding all of that. I don't think you get to know a person by just saying kumbaya. You have to fight them. You have to disagree with them. And in his greatness, he was able to overcome that. And that's what I personally still miss about Mayor Dinkins. I say that he was ahead of his time. We need him right now. I know that he paid his dues. I know that he did all he could. Man, do we miss that diplomat. Man, do we miss that man of character, a patriot that we're missing in this nation and in this city right now.
I consider Mayor Dinkins a shining star, a diplomat that made the city of New York what it is today, meaning when you watch all of the news programs, it talked about his grabbing and putting together the survival of the 42nd Street corridor, the US Open, how much revenue that brings to the city of New York and the United States from all over the world. And I'm turning to Hazel Dukes right now. Dr. Dukes, what was the relationship with Mayor Dinkins and women that were on his staff and women overall, as someone that is a civil rights leader and a leader in our state?
I'm glad that you brought that up. David was before his time. Do you know that David had deputy mayors as women? Joyce Brown, Elsie McCabe, Barbara Fife, Barbara Sable headed HRA. I am the first and only first woman and Black woman across the gambling that he made president and CEO of New York City off-track betting in every major department. Mm-hmm. David didn't make us assistants. He didn't make us administrative assistants. We were the head. Laura Blackburn was the chairman of NYCHA. So when you look at Biden and talking about what's happening now, Dave Dinkins was way ahead of their time. Women was not relegated to be what you thought women would be. Who ever thought that? Me. I walked in a room with Donald Trump and 18 men. And Donald Trump said, what is she doing here? And Esau, who ran the Albany All-Track Betty, says she is the president and CEO of New York City All-Track Betty. The only time I have the picture where they put me on the racing industry. Dave Dinkins highlighted women all through his administration. And David and Norm Steisel and Bill Lynch respected us for what we brought to the table.
I'm glad that you communicated to all of us here and out there the fact that his involvement as far as putting forward competent women leaders and not afraid to do that back then, just like
Yes.
Biden is doing it now.
Right.
But we have to come to a close. So I'm going to ask each one of you, think about this now. You have 30 seconds to make a comment about Mayor Dinkins.
I spoke with Dave's family and truly understand the pain that they had in losing a mom and dad at the same time, how they would just want something quiet to say so long to David. But I have been assured that soon and very soon, they will give us an opportunity in our own way, in our own experience, to say thank you to Dave Dinkins. He had a way of doing things without depending on press releases and being on TV. He just loved people. He loved this country, and he certainly loved our community. I know that when we are finished, history's going to record not him as the first Black, but one of the most compassionate, understanding mayor during the roughest time. And he would have left a footprint for all Americans to follow.
Thank you, Congressmember. Gerson Borrero.
I say that David N. Dinkins was mistreated by the time in which he was elected mayor and made history. I say that he was really mishandled in terms of the coverage of the media, of which I'm a part of. It was a great injustice in the way that we reported on David Dinkins and some of the tribulations that any mayor would have faced. But I think that the fact that he was the first Black man, the Black person, needs to be studied. It has to be corrected, the history. And I urge all those to really, if you want to find out the importance of our mayor in the 4 years that he was mayor and the contributions, what he laid out for this city, this great city of ours that right now needs a lot of help, go back to him. And what Dr. Dukes just mentioned, keep in mind that he was a man ahead of his times. I'd say it again, study him. Do not read everything that you was printed at that point. Go back and see the significance of the policies he said and the visionary person that he was. Our mayor is much greater than was written about him in real time at that time. And I hope that at CUNY or some other school of the City University of New York, which he really helped, that somehow there is some kind of tribute, a permanent homage to the life and legacy of David N. Dinkins, our mayor for life.
Thank you. Keith Wright, the county leader of New York County.
David Dinkins was a true public servant. I'll never forget, David, I had to write a speech and I went to Charlie Rangel's office and he probably doesn't remember this. And I was trying to write some things that David wanted done. And I wrote some things and Charlie said, no, take that out. You got to put the other thing in because, you know, David truly believes what he says. And he did. He was and if we take away nothing else, and I see all of these young people trying to run for this and run for that. David just didn't run for things. He did the work. He did the work. He didn't just pop up and say, I'm running for something. Just because you make a speech somewhere at a dinner doesn't mean you can run for office. Just because you appear on TV once in a while doesn't mean you can run for office. David was actually knocking on doors. And he, as Charlie said, he loved people. If we take nothing else away, David was a true public servant who changed everyone's lives for the better.
For me, on Saturdays, I said, I agree that the press did not treat us fairly. And I said us because, as the congressman and everyone have said, he was our mayor. He was our friend. He was our mentor and our teacher. And so I would hope too, I said Saturday, we got to write this story ourselves. We have to tell it, especially for the young people. We didn't talk about David selling his paper bags for a penny on the streets of Harlem. David was not born with a silver spoon in his mouth. As Keith Wright said, he worked hard. We got to instill that into our Black and brown children during this turbulent time where racism has raised its head again in so many ways. And so we must tell the story. We must be the ambassadors to talk about the legacy and of David N. Dinkins. And so the memories that we have now will turn into treasures, and we must give those treasures to our children, whom he loves so much.
Well said.
Well, let me thank all of you for coming in. All of you had so much information to share about your personal experiences and relationships with our former mayor, mayor for life, the 106th mayor of the city of New York, David Norman Dinkins. So thank you. And thank you for coming in on Represent NYC on Manhattan Neighborhood Network.